Good to go. Good morning, everybody. My name is Sarah Crum. I'm managing partner of SKC & Co. CPAs, and welcome to our December issue of Office Hours. We are really excited today to bring you an interactive workshop. Hopefully you all got the workbook in advance. We're going to go through that today. But just some housekeeping items for those of you that are new to Office Hours. This is being recorded. We will share the link with the registrants after today's session, and it will be available on our website. So if you wish to hide your video, please do so at this time. Otherwise, you may be recorded. So I want to also introduce Karen Donaway, our marketing director, and Brittany, her assistant, who will always help us in the chat with fielding questions. And we do want this to be as interactive as possible. So please make sure that you have questions, you have comments, chat them in, and Karen will interrupt us and we'll get a good dialogue going this morning. So I want to introduce Andrea Diaz, my wonderful, fabulous partner, who is my co-host for today's session. And we are going to be talking all about goal setting. We had gone through an activity as a firm about setting our vision, our strategic plan, and our goals. And it was so impactful to us and so meaningful that we wanted to figure out a way to incorporate some of that into goal setting. Of course, it took us probably the span of 9 months to go through all those activities and many, many hours, but we wanted to condense it as best as we could into what would benefit you guys from a goal setting perspective. So we're going to go through some tips and tricks today, walk you through the worksheet. And Andrea, welcome. Anything you want to share or add for the kickoff?
No, thanks. Excited to be here and looking forward to going through this process with all of you.
Yes. So those of you that know Andrea and I, we are highly motivated, goal-setting people and very results-oriented. So we may be excessively passionate about today's subject. So I'll apologize for that in advance. We are going to throw up only one poll today, and Brittany's going to put that up now, just so we can kind of get a pulse from the audience of where everybody is in setting their 2022 goals. Are they done and are they written down? Are they in your head? Have you done even your 2021 goals yet? Where's everybody so we kind of know who we have on board today? Just give it a couple more seconds for people to answer. And then Brittany, do you want to share the results with everybody? So just for everyone who is going to see the recording and not see the results of the poll, we have 10% of the people have their goals done and written down, 80% have them in their head, and 10% haven't even done last year's goals yet. So that's who we're working with today. And I think there's going to be something for everybody based on those statistics today. So let's jump in, shall we? What I wanted to start with is just a little bit background of what we went through as a firm this year and why we think it's so impactful for you guys to embrace some of this in your goal setting for 2022. So we decided, I want to say it was in the spring, that we needed to do a 5-year vision plan for the firm. We hired a great consulting company to help us walk through it. And we sat down, myself, Andrea, and our other partner, Bill, and pretty much mapped out what our firm was going to look like December 31st, 2026. And it was actually a really fun activity. And Andrea, you had commented, because we did a launch video for the firm to share it. You had commented in the video that it actually brought the three of us closer, which I thought was so very true, but not the first thing that I thought of. So it was just such a really cool bonding experience. And I don't know if you want to share anything about that from your perspective.
Sure. So when going through the process, everybody has in their mind what they want out of their company, what they want out of their life, where they see themselves in 5 years. And not often enough do we talk about it at our personal life, at home with our spouses, our significant others. But we certainly typically don't have time, because we're always so busy, to sit and talk about that vision of what we look like as a company together with your business partners. So as you dive into what's in your head, what are you thinking about? What does this look like for you? What we realized was that we all want the same things. And I think that was one of the biggest components. We all value, we all have the same values, and we all want our firm to go in a direction that are based on those values. And when you realize you have that commonality, I think it naturally brought us closer, and it worked and it jived. So I encourage you all, if you have partners, personally and professionally, because I think goal setting is just as important from a professional perspective as it is from a personal perspective, and they often overlap and join. But I encourage you all to have that conversation. Just ask your partner, or at home or in business, where do you see yourself in 5 years? It's a thought-provoking question.
It definitely is. And that's really where a lot of the really meat of goal setting comes from, is just sitting down and thinking about what do you want to accomplish, and all these thought-provoking questions. And we'll touch on some of them as we go through the presentation today. But it's not just, what do I want to get done next year? It's really, what's the vision that you have of yourself and who you are and where you are in your professional life, your personal life. And those are really those meditative moments where you can sit and really answer those questions that you'll get a lot of the benefit and the results for goal setting. So Brittany was kind enough to put the worksheet in the chat if you guys haven't gotten it from your email yesterday that she sent out. And we're going to I will put it up briefly here just so you can see it. Or no, I won't, because I can't share. There it is. Let's see. I think this is the blank one. Hopefully you guys can see the blank one. Can you guys see it? Awesome. Okay. So you should have the goal setting for success worksheet that Brittany put in the chat or sent out in yesterday's email. And we're going to kind of start with this part up here with the vision. And again, we have gone through it in the firm. We have gone through it for 5 years. But what I really want to talk about and bringing it to everybody on this call is, let's look out 1 year. Let's look at 2022. And what is the one problem that you want to solve for? What is the one obstacle that you want to overcome in your life? And Andrea, you put it in a really great way if you want to share sort of how you ask yourself in the next 12 months.
Yes, if you could solve for one thing, what would it be? One thing next year. What's the one thing that's going to make your business better? What's the one thing that's going to make your personal life better? Whichever it is, you can take either path, personal and professional, in this. But I don't want you to limit yourself to what you think you can solve. I think you have to expand it to even something that you may think right now may not be solvable. What is that one thing? What is that? And it varies. I ask this question to all my clients. I ask this question to a lot of people. If you could solve for one thing next year, what would it be? And often they're like, I would love to fix this, but, and inevitably there is a reason or excuse of why they can't after that. And we want that challenge, because we want to walk you through breaking it down into steps and tasks on how it could potentially be solvable.
Right. So we're not going to take 5 minutes and have you pick up your pencil and put your heads down to fill out this worksheet. We want you to really take your time on your own time. And like I said, pick it up, put it down, go through some meditative questions. But we just want to kind of walk you through our thought process and some guidance on how we think you can best do it. So Andrea had said to me as we were preparing to this, when she thinks about where she wants to be, let's say at the end of 2022, she wants to look at it from a perspective of, what are we going to be celebrating next year? So when it's December 31st, what are we going to look back upon what we accomplished, and what are we going to be cheering for and so excited for? When we talk to our clients, a lot of times we talk about what keeps you up at night that you wish wasn't happening. What do you want to solve for? What obstacle? And Andrea's right. Some people call it stretch goals, reach goals. But what is the thing that in a perfect world, if you could resolve, and if you could be celebrating it next year, what is that one thing? And this sheet works personally and professionally. And that's why we wanted to kind of do a sort of tag team today. We have actually gone through and done examples. I have done one on the professional side, and Andrea has done one on the personal side. So you can kind of see how it works. And we'll share a little bit, Andrea, if you want to go first, about what your one thing was, and then I'll talk about what mine was.
So every year I do personal goal setting, and of course we do professional goal setting, but I decided to run a marathon. It's been a bucket list of mine. And if any of you know me personally, you know that running is not my forte. I am not I'll say runner. I am running a marathon in 2022, but this isn't like, oh, I typically run 10 miles on the weekend, and now I'm just going to take that to the next level. I barely did 5Ks. So that's my goal, and I certainly had a process, and we'll go through that process and how I'm currently, just so you know, at 20 miles, and I will run 26.2 on January 10th. 9th.
We actually could have done the entire office hours on Andrea's training for running a marathon, which I was all for, but Karen didn't really think that would be the most impactful session for everyone. So here we are doing a personal and a professional one. But I give you lots of credit, Andrea, when you had suggested that you were going to run a marathon. It actually started as a half marathon, if you remember. And you were trying to rope me into it. And I was actually kind of biting the line at a half marathon. And then all of a sudden you showed up one day and you're like, yeah, I'm going to do the whole thing. And I was like, I'm out. So you certainly decided to push yourself and implement that stretch goal. So I'm excited to see you run it in January and have you walk everybody through your goal setting for that. So mine is a little less illustrious than running a marathon. On the professional side, one of my goals for 2022 is to revamp our internal team review process. We want to make it more consultative and coaching in style, and we want to have everybody on a career path map that ties back to our vision statement and our mission statement and our firm values. So, that is my goal for 2022 that we'll be walking you through on this sheet today. And what I think is so important, and it was interesting when the poll results came back that 80% of people had their 2022 goals in their head. The reason why we sent this worksheet out is because it's such an important element to write them down and to document them. And we wanted to give you the mechanism to do that with this worksheet. And if you look under the vision section, that's the very next thing. Put it on paper and share it and write down in detail what you want to accomplish. So figure out what that one thing that you want to celebrate at the end of 2022 is, and then really dig in and put meaning behind why you want to accomplish it. And that will make it stick so much better for you. So I don't know if anybody wants to share any of their potential vision moments for 2022, if they're comfortable with that, or if they have any questions on how do you even begin to figure out which direction to go in. If anybody's comfortable, we'd love to have sort of an interactive moment if you want to come off mute or put anything in the chat. Go ahead, Matt. I can see you on video.
Hi, everybody. So one of my goals for next year is building more partnerships, not necessarily sales or accounts, but building more partnerships that lead to more sales. I find that making new connections with people that are similar that I already do very well with helps me to expand my web. So that's one of my goals for next year, is more partnerships, just like the good ones I already have.
That's a great one. I love it.
I love it. And I think this worksheet will be great to achieve that, because it'll go through the process of how do you get new partnerships? Where did great partnerships come from? And what do you have to do? I think that's awesome.
And a lot of times too, we hear from our clients, we want more sales. We want to, tighten up our team. We want to make this new hire. And those are a lot that we hear on the business side. I think most people are probably very familiar on the personal side, whether it's relationship goals or health and fitness goals. Everybody knows about the New Year's resolution, where you start going to the gym and it's really crowded the first 2 weeks of January, and then no one shows up after the 10th or the 15th, and it goes back to the way that it was. So again, this is personal or professional that we can use this for. Andrea, before we move off the one thing for 2022, do you want to actually talk a bit about the one thing book that I know you've read several times and are involved in?
Yes. So every year I go through, I don't know if any of you have read the book, The One Thing, but at every year the One Thing, the people who wrote The One Thing, the authors, have a conference. They actually have often two conferences, one for couples that you can do, or individuals, and then one you can do for professional. And I have a group, and we go through this conference every year, and it's goal setting. And they're very thought-provoking questions. It relates it starts with your values and understanding, what's most valuable to you, and then how do you get to your, what they call your someday. So your someday could mean many different things. Sarah and I were talking about our some days yesterday and how we ask certain clients what their some days are. And some clients will tell you that their someday is having, being at their company until they are no longer with us. And some people will tell you that their someday is on a beach or on a boat with cocktails in hand. So it varies greatly, the answers that you'll get, but essentially the book brings, or the goal setting brings you through what does your someday look like, then it kind of backs up what do you have to do to get to that someday, and breaks it down all the way to specific tasks that you should do on a weekly basis to get you to your someday. So take, what does 20 years from now look like, and let's break it down into what you have to do next week to get there. So it's eye-opening. I think it's intense. It's intense, yes, and I think it's a great program. If anybody wants to, read the book, it's all on. You can get the book and then go through the program online. They do it once a year in November.
So my someday is not 2022. It's much further out than that. And I think yours is too, Andrea, when we were talking yesterday. Yeah. But again, we're scaling it down to how can we goal set for next year, but keeping these things in mind, right? So we may incrementally be doing annual goals, but we can certainly think about, as we did at SKC, the 5-year vision, and what do we have to do incrementally each year and each quarter within those years to get to where we want to go. So whatever your someday is, if you want to start there and then scale it back to 2022 and what needs to be accomplished there, certainly you can do that. And I will tell you that I'm certain that it's true for Andrea and myself that we have multiple goals. So it's not just one, but we're just doing the illustration today to take you through sort of what your one thing could be and how you can outline that for subsequent goals that you have as well. So let's shift gears and go to the next piece of the goal setting worksheet, which is what we're calling strategic planning. But really, this may be one of the most important parts of the entire exercise, because this is where the excuses come from. So the strategic planning part for this purpose is, what are the roadblocks? So you've got your thing that you want to do by 2022, by the end of 2022. What are the obstacles? What are the roadblocks? What do you have to move out of your way to be able to achieve this? And again, this is the most important part because this is where the excuses come from. So if we write these down and we go through the process of thinking about them in advance and developing mechanisms or developing strategies to remove these as obstacles before they even become obstacles, we're not going to have those excuses. We're not going to say, I didn't have enough time. We're not going to say, I didn't have enough resources. I didn't have the buy-in, or whatever the excuses could be. We're going to eliminate those before we even start the new year so that they don't even become excuses.
So I'll give you a, for instance, for my marathon, which was, of course, I was like, I want to run a marathon. This is great, but I'm not a runner. I don't even know if I have the right form to run. Like, does my foot actually hit the ground in the proper way to be able to get to 26.2 miles without hurting myself? And where do you start? Where do you begin? I have no previous experience with this. So can I do it? Is it possible? It's a little bit of the self-doubt. It's the, I don't even know where to start. I don't even know how to start, but I would love to do it. And we all have that, especially with when we think big enough to what is the one thing we want to achieve next year, or what's the one problem we want to solve for. We all have the but ... And so we want you to put that down and understand what it is, because then the next part is figuring out how to overcome it.
Right. So for interactivity purposes, if you guys want to just throw into the chat some common roadblocks and obstacles that any goal, it doesn't have to be specifically to your goal, but just things, whether you've experienced with prior goals that you've set, or just running a business and knowing obstacles and roadblocks that are present? What are some common roadblocks that you guys have come across in the last couple of years? And Andrea, for you, I would imagine that one of the biggest obstacles is time, because I know as you've increased the number of miles that you're running, that takes time, right? So
it's a commitment.
Yeah,
it's a time commitment. Yeah.
You would have to understand that and calendar that and make sure that you don't get to a day that's supposed to be a long run and say, I don't have time today to do this long run, because that's just going to set you back from your goal.
And as we go further into the worksheet, we'll talk about calendaring later. But it certainly is. I actually had a conversation with someone who just ran the New York City Marathon I had a conversation with him last night, and he ran it well. And after that, he of course now wants to run Boston, because he now has the itch. And his wife said, hold on, we have to plan for this, because the time commitment is significant. And so with, 2 little kids at home, it like anything achievable that's a stretch goal, you must plan for it. It doesn't just happen overnight. You don't just wake up the next day and say, I'm going to go do this. It's a planning process.
Right. And we can't just write it down today and then it magically happens by December 31st. So, for my goal of working on improving our team reviews, obviously there's resistance to change that happens. There's allocating time, as we talked about, to be able to develop and implement something like this. And then we also have some, requirements as far as our licensing and certain evaluations of technical skills that we need to do, that we need to kind of work into the process as well. So, there are some roadblocks with every goal, but let's pop open the chat and see what some people have talked about as common goals. So staffing. That's
big one this year.
It's a huge one. I have not met a business owner that is not either trying to hire, has recently hired, or is desperate to hire. Breaking out of the habits. So I've developed that. Yeah. So breaking out of some bad habits that need to change to be able to meet the new goal. Longer days, need to focus on time management for self-care. That's hugely important. That can be a goal in and of itself, is just making enough time for self-care in a year. Setting up a marketing and business development team. So yeah, these are a lot of common things that we hear. Andrea, any others that haven't been touched on, or anything, any advice for some of those obstacles?
Sure. I think, and I don't know how you didn't touch on this, but our book club, we have an internal SKC book club. We just read the book Atomic Habits. Right. And so for the person who commented on habits, I think it's a great book to read. It's eye-opening. We'll actually take some ideas from that book later as we talk about the specific goals and what they should be, and how specific. Because there's an example in that book, but Atomic Habits is a great book to change bad habits and institute new positive habits.
Yeah, it was really eye-opening for us to talk about it in our book club, because we're all guilty of similar habits, bad habits, checking our email too much, or not having the morning routine that we want, and a lot of them were very obvious to bleed over into the professional and personal side of things. So it was an interesting exercise to go through and share and talk about that. And we'll touch on some more examples from that book as we go through. But the second part of the strategic planning section of the worksheet is really about, so what does need to get done in 12 months, right? What are our obstacles and how do we remove them? Because that's probably, like we said, you should be spending at least 50% of your time in goal setting on how do we remove the obstacles? How do we work around the roadblocks? And then specifically what's needed to get it done. So if I know I need to remove all of these things, then what do I need? Do I need time? Do I need money? Do I need staff? What are the things that you need to have as far as resources go to support you in achieving these goals?
And sometimes you may not even know what you need. So it may be I'm not sure what I need to overcome these obstacles. So one of your goals may be, to figure out what those obstacles are. So talk to either other business owners, or for me, it was talk to other people who have run a marathon, join, certain groups, running forums. So you may not have an answer to your roadblocks and obstacles. It may be researching how you figure out certain items to overcome them.
That's a great point. And I had actually asked you this yesterday, Andrea, when we were kind of running through this, which was, what are you going to listen to for 26.2 miles while you have your earphones in? And you would not have known the answer to this had you not have belonged to the forum. So
right.
Quick sidebar, Andrea is actually running the marathon in Disney. So she joined a Facebook group, I think it is, that Run Disney. So evidently, when you're running through the actual park, no one wants to listen to anything because the energy is so high, and you can kind of channel from the spectators watching and the other runners. So you don't actually listen to anything until you're sort of by yourself on back roads, which again, she never would have even known that had she not have done the research and joined this group and really, educated herself on what she didn't know, because
you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly. I mean, we're a huge fan of, I'm going to call them support groups or masterminds, or, groups of other business owners who can connect and help support one another. And that's really what you want to have is your own, personal support group of who you surround yourself with to educate you and introduce you to people who can educate you if they don't have it in your immediate circle. And, that's really the most important thing. Andrea, somebody does want to know in the chat what you are going to listen to when you.
Yeah. So while running through the parks, my understanding is that you don't want to be listening to anything because the characters and the energy is so high that you kind of just want to take that component all in. But I do have some playlists. I am probably more of a, this may surprise some of you, but more of like an Eminem listen to her. While I'm running, and Karen,
and on the boat too, not just running.
Karen just died a little inside, but I like to get pumped up for while I'm on the side roads.
Nice.
I will also say, as we put a lot of energy and support into mastermind groups and other groups, we also, as a firm and individually, put a significant amount of emphasis on coaches. We went through this process this year with a coach. We still have a coach. We have a firm coach. And the first thing I did when looking to run a marathon was get a running coach. Because I back to the I didn't know what I didn't know. And that coach helped me, one, physically, but helped me significantly with advice on running, running practice marathons, so that you're used to running by yourself is very different than running in a race. And so he said, when you're at your halfway mark, run a half marathon, actually run one and get the feeling of what it's like to run in a race, because it is completely different. So groups, forums, masterminds, coaches, I think they are all, and coaching is where I overcame or got answers on how to overcome a lot of my obstacles. So sometimes it's reaching out to professionals that just understand and know the industry or the challenge you're currently facing.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to reinvent the wheel here. We should really tap into the support groups that we know and have. And Andrea, we love coaches at SKC. A lot of our team members have coaches. So super important. And again, if you don't know where to reach out to next, certainly reach out to us, and we're happy to plug you into the networks that we know and give you that support that you might need. So let's get a little bit more specific into goals and the specifics of how to accomplish things, right? So if we're looking at the end of 2022 and what we're celebrating in having accomplished in those 12 months, we've got to break that down into goals. So what are the actual goals that need to be achieved in order for the big one thing to happen at the end of 2022? Now, we had put on the worksheet 3 goals. It might not be 3 goals. It might be a 5-step process for you to get through what you need to get through to accomplish this at the end of 22. It might be 1 or 2 things. It's going to be very different depending on what your goal is and where you are with your company or personal life and having the support for that. So we laid it out for 2. It could be a whole lot more than that. And remember, we want to make sure that we're removing obstacles as we go through this process. So if there's roadblocks that you've identified in the previous step, we want to make sure that these goals also include removing those roadblocks and obstacles. And then we drill it down, and it goes back to what Andrea said in the beginning of taking it down to, what do I need to do this week? I mean, take those goals and break those goals into tasks. And each of those tasks can probably be calendared and distilled into monthly, quarterly, weekly, daily, so that you can make sure you're making that forward progress. And that's really what the most important part is, to set yourself up for success. I didn't want this to be about SMART goals, because I know a lot of things are about SMART goals, and pretty much everybody knows what SMART goals are. If you don't, you can Google them. But we want to get really specific in what our goals are to accomplish this one thing, because that's how it all comes together. And this is sort of the reference point, Andrea, from Atomic Habits. I don't know if you want to share that example of what he had talked about.
So the goal, one of his goals was to be more physically fit and to exercise more. And the task was to do 10 push-ups every day at lunch. Well, in the first 3 days that he wanted to do these 10 push-ups every day at lunch, he didn't know, should I do it before I eat lunch? Should I do it after I eat lunch? What is the exact time that I'm going to do these 10 push-ups? So he revamped the task to, I will do 10 push-ups every day when I shut my laptop before I eat lunch. So he shuts his laptop on his way to lunch, does 10 push-ups. The idea is that you take the thinking process out of the task that you're doing. It is calendared. This is what I'm doing today at this time. And then you just do it. So you don't have to think about, well, do I want to, I'll do it after lunch instead of before lunch. The goal is to be more physically fit. The task is to do 10 push-ups at lunch, or the task is to do 10 push-ups when you close your laptop, before you eat lunch at that specific time every day. So you want to get extremely granular and plan it now, so that when the day comes or that time comes to execute, the thought process is out. You know what you have to do. You've already thought it out and written it down and put it on your calendar. And this is what you're going to do on this day at this time.
You want to figure out a way to make your habits part of your routine. So if you want to adopt these good habits to accomplish these goals, how do we make that part of your routine? Because your routine is just what you naturally do every day. You get up, you brush your teeth, you go through sort of the rote exercise of your routine. How can we get to a place where we're very specifically incorporating our goals into our routines? The other example that he used in the book was remembering to take your vitamins. So if your morning routine is you get up, you brush your teeth, you go make coffee, put the vitamins next to your coffee. So when you're making your coffee, you take your vitamins when you make your coffee. I mean, it sounds incredibly common sense when you read it and say it out loud, but clearly we're human and can't seem to get it all together all the time. So we have to be reminded of these common sense things. And like I said, it was a great reminder of what we really should be doing in order to get to a higher level of potential than we currently are. And that's really what this is all about, is at the end of 2022, how are we going to be better than we were on January 1st? I had shared with the firm a few months back a really great quote, which was, you will be the same in 1 year as you were in the beginning, except for the people you meet and the books that you read. And I can't remember who said the quote, but I thought it was really amazing. And you make decisions every day and you set goals and you have your routine and your habits, but are they set up so that you're getting incrementally better every single day? And what will you look like at the end of the year based on the decisions that you make and the plan and the routines that you go through every single day of that year? So,
Tara, I saw you have something. Go ahead.
Yeah. I just wanted to add too, like your thoughts around flexibility, so, and not beating yourself up if you fall off a little bit or whatever, and trying to stay positive because things come up too. So have to be a
Oh,
little
Kara,
flexible.
don't you know, I could give you 17 examples of that through this training process, because it's a long, hard road, no pun intended, but to get to where you want to be. And of course, there's going to be times throughout the year that you didn't do the task that you had calendared, or you inevitably end up moving it because something else has come up, and it happens. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. You know, I set out at one point to run 12 miles. I left my house and I was running 12 miles this Saturday, and I bought new sneakers. By the way, if you're ever going to run a marathon, nothing new on race day. That's what everybody keeps telling me. So I've done this. I switched sneakers once. And what happened? I didn't make it 12 miles. By mile 9, I was actually almost crying in pain because my knee. I went to a sneaker store originally to buy sneakers. They watched me run. They told me to buy these sneakers. I bought them. I wanted different, prettier ones. I thought they were all the same. So, you know, when you're not a runner, you don't know. And so I bought different ones. They were really cute, and I didn't make it as far as I wanted to. And what happens is the negative self-talk. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if my body's built this way. I don't know if I can get 26. I can't even get 12. You fall off. You then don't want to do your next long run. You don't want to go the next step, the next level. And we all get there. But I think it's very hard to will yourself out of getting back on track. And this is what we talk about kind of as the last component, which is having accountability partners, accountability people, and having coaches, because, you know, you talk to your coach and it happens to every runner. So having people, forums, coaches, and accountability partners when we get in those ruts is what's going to get us out and back on track.
So much of this is really about mindset, right? And that's what Andrea said, you know, when she didn't finish that 12-mile run, you can't then go home and quit the goal of running a marathon. And you know, you have to, no one is, well, some people are superhuman in their willpower and they can just force themselves to do things. I'll argue that's not the majority of people. So having that support group, having positive affirmations and a positive mindset, and the ability, and I'll use the example of you know, trying not to eat junk food or trying to eat healthier if that happens to be a goal or you know, a constant battle that you fight. You know, if you decide you're going to have a donut or you end up having a donut for breakfast in the morning, don't then let yourself spiral down and say, well, the whole day's shot, so I might as well have, you know, an Italian sub for lunch, and I might as well have pizza and calamari for dinner. I mean, no offense to those foods, I eat them all, but, you know, don't let yourself, you know, get sucked down the path of giving up and giving in to one little blip or one little misstep. And I think, Karen, this is where you were going with flexibility. Life happens, right? And sometimes we expect it, sometimes we don't, but allow for that to happen. Figure out a way to build that into your plan so there is flexibility, and allow yourself to get back on that plan. And whether that's giving yourself affirmations, whether that's going back to your coach or your support group, back up to the first why you're doing this is really something to revisit multiple times throughout the year, especially when you may have gone off track a little bit. Because if you can revisit the why you want to accomplish that, or how Andrea said, your someday, and why is your someday so meaningful to you, and how does that tie to your personal values, that why is going to be what drives you over the humps. And that's what's going to get you out of, you know, back on track if you've gone off track. And knowing that that's going to happen and expecting that's going to happen and having that as part of the plan is where you're much, much more set up for success than if you just kind of don't even think that that's going to happen and hope that you just brute force willpower yourself through 365 days of accomplishing this. That's pretty much the formula for failure if you don't have these sort of stop gaps for positivity and support and flexibility built in.
Absolutely. So I wanted to go back just kind of to the worksheet from, goal 1, 2, 3, and then broken into tasks, and give you an example. And Sarah and I can each give you an example of what we did. So my goal 1 was get a coach. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but we love coaches, and I'm very good at being told what to do. I'm a very good student, and I'm a very good listener. So if you tell me what to do, I will do it. And if you tell me that those steps will get me somewhere, then that's even better. So my tasks were to research running coaches, what to look for, how to find one, talk to others who have run marathons for their advice, join online groups and forums for recommendations. So it's my first goal in attacking running a marathon was getting a coach to understand all of the or get answers to all of the obstacles, and to do research online, talk to others, use my support groups. Goal 2 was develop a plan. I work very well with structure, and I wanted to know every week, and I actually have this, every week from the day I started training, which was May, until the day of my marathon, which was January, which is in the beginning of January, what I was running, what I had to do in order to get to 26.2 miles on January 9th. And I have it broken out by week, every day, where I was running, when I was running, the time I was running. That, of course, that was a goal. I knew for me, that's just the way I operate at my best, is to have an exact plan. So goal 2 was to develop the plan. And so I worked with my coach. I identified different, obstacles. So the tasks were to identify which marathon to run, and put together the plan and identify, practice runs and all of that. And then goal 3 was would run 3 practice races. And that was really from a researching, fueling perspective of how do you, what do you do for 26.2 miles? What do you drink? What do you eat? How do you maintain energy through all of that? So
I'd like to know how you go to the bathroom, but I guess that's for a different office hours.
So I've gotten up to 20 miles, and I did not go to the bathroom at all in that 20 miles. So
wow.
I only have to make it 6.2 without having to. But running practice, goal 3 was running practice races so that I understood what to anticipate. And those tasks, the goals for those tasks, or the tasks to reach that goal, was looking at various practice races, knowing where they're close to home, and then planning for it, because you often have to travel, planning the time, planning the expense, how much is it going to cost, and having someone else there, God forbid something went wrong. So thankfully for me, my partner, David, has been willing to go everywhere that I go to run, and has supported me through this, which is great. So, but breaking it into tasks, because we can't, I shouldn't say we can't, the best way to achieve our goals is to break them up into very little identifiable tasks that we can do to get to that goal.
And for me, one of the goals for changing the internal review process is to conduct focus groups with the team so that there's buy-in and engagement. So that one goal is actually broken up into 3 or 4 different tasks. So first we have to identify what phase of this process requires input. And I'm sure there's multiple ones throughout the process. And who are the best people to be in the focus group? We have to identify those participants. And we have to schedule the focus groups, and all the input has to be done before we can schedule the focus groups. So much of this is tied to, when we talked about calendaring, we didn't actually use the term due dates. Which I think is really important when you talk about setting up your goals and the component parts to accomplish your one thing. Set up due dates so that you can then backfill the tasks with due dates to meet that final goal. And that really naturally allows you to calendar it, because you know this is a due date. And again, it's a mindset that you have to treat that as if it's a client deadline, or as if it's a family, function expectation that you have to attend to. And this kind of goes back and forth with the self-care conversation we touched on before. Don't put yourself on the back burner. Andrea did say, and Karen talked about flexibility, that you will probably have to move things that you've calendared. No doubt that's going to happen, but move them and make sure they get done. Because if you don't treat yourself as important as many people feel other people are, you're not going to accomplish what you want to accomplish. And you deserve and should be able to fulfill your full potential as much as anybody else. So I think it's really important to assign due dates to not only the goals, but the tasks as well, so that they can very clearly you can be held accountable for that on your calendar. So as we sort of run down in our last 10 to 15 minutes here, I do want to open it up to any discussion that people have, or any questions or problems that we could kind of troubleshoot together as a group. But the sort of highlight I want to touch on with accountability is writing it down is number one most important, and sharing it with people. Andrea talked about this before, which was an accountability partner. If you don't have somebody who you feel can be your accountability partner, we at SKC would love to be your accountability partner. So reach out to myself, Andrea, Karen, respond to the email that you got the worksheet from. That would be Brittany's email. And just say, hey, I'm looking for support through this process. We're happy to do that for you. We're excited to do that. We get excited when our clients hit their successes and surpass their goals. So we thrive on that kind of energy. And we'd love to sort of participate with you guys in achieving your goals as well. So I will open it up to any questions, and people can throw them in the chat, but go ahead, Anj. I know you wanted to say something.
Well, I was just going to say, tell everyone what you're doing. Blast it on social. From a personal perspective, I told everybody I'm running a marathon. I put it on social media. I told family and friends. I literally told every person that I could, knowing that if I told them, I wouldn't quit. Because I'm not going to go back to the 100 people that I told, or whoever. Social media, it could have been 1,000, and say, oh, I decided not to do it because it's too hard. Those words are never going to come out of my mouth. So there have been times, and I shared this with Sarah, that I've come home from 17 miles and been like, why am I doing this? This is crazy. And it is beyond hard, and it takes a toll on your body. And there were times where I was like, if I hadn't told everybody I'm doing this, I wouldn't continue to do it. But I want it so bad. And I'm glad that I did tell everybody, and I have gotten through those bouts of not wanting to keep going and not wanting to keep do it, because it's peaks and valleys, like everything, right? Sometimes I'm super jazzed and like, oh my God, I can't wait for this. And other times I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? So having accountability partners and telling everyone, and making everyone aware, I think is so important, because it helps keep you accountable, helps keep you on track. And we often do this with clients, having monthly meetings with clients and quarterly meetings. When we talk to clients and they say, yes, I'm going to do that this month, they know they have a meeting with us next month, and that we're going to say, hey, how did that work out? And, inevitably it's kind of a natural accountability partner, because then they have to come back and say, either I did it worked out great, or oh, I didn't get to that yet. I got to get to that again.
Yeah, and then they feel shame-filled that they have to confess to us that they didn't do it.
Well, hopefully not shame-filled, but at least it gives them a little bit more fire to fulfill what they have to do.
Well, because that's the aspect of they're letting other people down too, not just themselves. And sometimes that's worse for people than letting themselves down.
Right.
Andrea, share with the group what you told me was the hardest race you'll ever run.
The race between your two ears.
Right. So that talks about mindset. And yeah, I mean, so many reasons why I wasn't joining you on this marathon quest, but it goes back to mindset, and think of the mindset that you have to run 26.2 miles and do that training that Andrea has committed to, and think about whatever your goal or goals are for next year, and what you need to really get straight in your mind in order to not let yourself fall off track. And I think that's a huge part of goal setting and goal achievement is really getting that right mindset and planning and setting yourself up for success by trying to discover what all of the obstacles and roadblocks that translate into excuses are, so you can remove them before we even start.
And most of us on this call are business owners, or we're successful individuals, and we've done hard things. We can continue to do hard things, and I encourage all of you to put yourself through something hard next year that will be worth it. Because if it doesn't scare you a little bit, if it doesn't have some component of like, oh, what am I doing? I don't know if I could do this. If it doesn't have some aspect of
the cringe factor,
then maybe you're not pushing yourself hard enough next year. We've all had a really hard 2 years. So I'm not saying that if making it past the last 2 years has been hard enough.
Right.
But if we want to push ourselves and get to that next level and achieve whatever it is, that one thing that you want to achieve this year, it's going to be hard. Understand it, embrace it, and use everybody around you to help you get past it.
Absolutely. Karen, you took yourself off mute.
Yeah, I just wanted to know if you would talk a little bit about managing multiple goals. So what does that feel like? Especially like Andrea, the commitment to run a marathon. But I know you, and I know you have professional goals working at the same time. So, and Sarah, you too, how does that work?
I mean, I think it sums it up in one word, is organization. You have to be very organized and plan everything. And I mean, if anybody had access to mine and Sarah's calendar, you would see just how specific certain things, are, from reading, working out, blocked out on calendars, time of this is when I go to the gym. This is when Sarah has on her calendar, this is when she calls certain people in the office just to check in. We all have, it is organization and setting yourself up, having a plan, setting it up for success, right? So Sarah, I don't know what you want to add, but I think it kind of can be that simple.
Yeah, I mean, it's organizing, it's calendaring, but I think it's also, when you talk about having personal goals and professional goals, it's about having those support systems and those sort of accountability partners in each of those areas. So at SKC, the partners all have goals. We have to report to each other at our monthly partner meetings, how we're doing and where we are in our progress. I mean, that's a seriously formal accountability process. And, create that for yourself on the personal side with your personal goals. Andrea did that with telling everybody that she knows that she's running a marathon and having a coach that she's accountable to. But it's really trying to balance both of those things, and setting yourself up for success in the beginning. I mean, when we first did our partner goals and submitted them to our coach, and he gave us feedback. His feedback on my goals were, this is a lot. Do you think you'll be able to do all of this with your regular job? And I didn't even look at it from that perspective. I was just, this is part of our strategic plan. These are the things that pertain to what I can utilize my strengths for. So this is what we're going to get done. And I didn't even look and say, maybe I should tweak these or change some of the due dates or anything like that. So that's the other benefit of sharing it with other people and having a coach and having an accountability partner, is being able to have that different perspective and say, maybe we shouldn't be so gung-ho in, all of these things. Let's be a little bit more realistic. And again, that's the balance between what's a stretch goal and what's putting yourself out of your comfort zone versus biting off more than anybody can possibly chew. So we are approaching the top of the hour. I do want to thank Andrea for joining me today. We are really excited about our goals and our vision for the next 5 years. And we want you guys to equally be excited about what you want to accomplish and achieve. As I said earlier, we're happy to be your accountability partners. We're happy to help you troubleshoot through some of the obstacles that you might have as you're going through this process. So please don't be afraid to reach out to us. We do wish everybody a happy and healthy holiday. And Andrea, we wish you a whole lot of luck in January when you run your marathon, and maybe we'll do an office hour recap on how successful that was and how you can help us all learn to be better with our goal setting and sticking to it. So thank you everybody for joining us this morning, and have a great day.